Fala galera, Cristiano aqui hoje no comando do Heavy Culture Talk com Becky. E hoje nós vamos estar falando um pouquinho sobre a carreira da Becky, Baldwin, uh, Mercyful Fate, o background dela. Antes disso, né, não esqueçam de se inscrever, apertar o sininho de notificações e vamos lá. Becky, it is a great pleasure to talk to you. Okay, it's like really nice to see a young girl like you getting into a great band as you know Merciful Fate. And how is it for you to be part of it? Because I know that you were a fan of it since you were a teenager.
Yes, yeah. So it was very surreal for me. It was the first time I got to see the band was at this festival called Bloodstock, which is in the Midlands near where I live. And so it was my first opportunity to ever see the band and to then end up meeting them and then be asked to play a forthcoming tour was just mind blowing because I've been listening to this band since I was a teenager, and they were very influential on me. And I know how influential they have been on so many other metal bands. It was just very surreal.
And how about your influences to start playing the bass? Because it's like somehow it's difficult to find someone interested in playing the bass because sometimes you say like the bass doesn't care much, you know. Like most of the people are like that, unfortunately. And for me, the bass and the drums are the things that are more important in the band. And you have to have a good bass player and a good drummer too, in order to have like a solid band, you know. And how is this interest for the instrument and your influences?
I agree. I think, to me, bass players and drummers are the most exciting elements of the band. I think it did take a while to really get excited about playing bass. So when I first started playing, I was about 12, just turning 13. And I picked up the bass because my friends were playing guitar and I wanted to join in, but this was kind of the only way to join in without totally copying them and end up with like too many guitarists. So I thought, okay, let's give bass a go. And then once I did, I started to realize how cool bass players were. Because at first I didn't really know the difference. When you're quite young, you just see people with guitars, and you don't really know what's the difference between one or the other. And then, once I did identify what actually is the bass player and who is the guitarist, I was like, nah, the bass player is definitely the coolest. Like, they're not too in your face. They're not like, they don't seem as like, full of themselves or anything. Not to like throw any shade on guitarists, but
Yeah.
they're kind of understated, and I quite like that about bass players in general. And a lot of them have like a kind of quiet, kind of cool, like I guess everyone knows Lemmy, and he's not like he's an interesting character, but he's not this like crazy, like loud personality. Like everything he says is just really interesting, but he's not
Yeah.
always shouting about something, if you know what I mean. That was his kind of more relaxed, kind of cool thing going on.
And how about your band, Fury? How's it doing? Are you intending to release an album, something like that? Because you have singles until now. I think like any full album. Is it being planned or something like that?
So we released an album in the last album was out in March 2022. So we've been touring that since then, and then we're working on writing the next album now. So
Oh,
it's it's just a constant like cycle. So we released one in 2020, like right at the start of the lockdowns in the UK. So that didn't really go to plan, the tour that we had, obviously. And now we're back to it. We're back in the kind of like album cycle, and we're really hoping that the next one's gonna give us more opportunities to tour different places. Because this year the plans are just to tour within Europe, but who knows where things could go after this.
great. And one interesting thing is like, how do you feel and how was your auction with the King when they
Oh,
invited you to play bass?
yeah. Oh my god, yeah, it was so good. It was so cool. All of the shows were so incredible. All of the fans were just going crazy because I mean, the tour in the USA Mercyful hadn't been to America for I think 23 years. So for a lot of fans, especially younger fans, they wouldn't have had an opportunity at all to see the band. So it was really exciting to be there. And, it was all very exciting for me, of course, because like I'm a big fan and I'm seeing them for the first time as well as everyone else there.
Yeah, it's like it's pretty different than seeing him live and then playing together with him because there is like a responsibility, and then it's like this sometimes can affect it a little bit because you're also a fan and also an employee at the same time.
Yeah. Like I haven't actually seen Mercyful Fate live from the audience perspective because the only time I saw them was at this festival where they asked me to join to play the tour. And because I was backstage, they were like, "I'll just come and watch the show from the side of stage," which is really cool. Like, don't get me wrong, but you don't get the kind of visual just completeness of being in front of the stage, seeing how cool and symmetrical everything is, like the stairs and like the big pentagram and stuff. And also just being around people who are going completely crazy because this is probably their first time seeing the band who they've been following for 15 years as well. So there's something different about being in the audience and watching it compared to on side of stage or on stage. I mean, still very exciting on stage, but I was kind of feeling jealous of the people in the audience just being able to cut loose and go crazy because that was kind of what I wanted to do, but I had a job.
Yeah, it's kind of different playing your own band and then playing in another band that you're a fan and seeing the fans of the band are completely different than your fans too sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's like I think it's like something very exciting at the same time, a little bit like frightening.
Yeah.
Well, it's like more and more we see girls in bands, okay, and this is very good. This is nice to see. Although something that I have to say is like that a little bit bothers me when the new generation, like girls like 20 to 30, says that there were no girls playing heavy metal, death metal, thrash metal, whatever in the 80s and the 90s, which is a lie. There were a lot. The problem was the media. The media didn't want them to show up, or they didn't give much importance for women playing at that time. And nowadays, the media is getting more interested, or I don't know why they're giving more importance to women, young girls playing instruments and things like that. And I think you were in the perfect time to do that too, because if you were playing the bass in the 80s, maybe you were going to be just a great bass player that no one would care much, only like the underground scene. But now you were in the perfect time to be in the right time, what I mean. So like, how do you feel this transition? Because I think bands like with lots of girls from the 80s and the 90s, and how you see this like, I forgot the word, spotlight on you and the new girls, and the other girls, they didn't get this spotlight, but they have great importance in the scene. I would say a huge importance in the scene. How do you see that?
I think that the media has been forced to pay attention to women because there's less traditional ways of consuming media these days. Like before, it was just whoever's in charge of the magazine, and then later on, who's in charge of like the music channels and things like this. Those are the people who decide who gets to go in front of, who gets seen by anyone. And who's in charge of like the record labels and things. But now with the age of social media, Instagram, Facebook, we're kind of like completely missing those people out, and people uploading their videos on YouTube and Instagram and things are getting seen by thousands of people without having to use a magazine to get in front of those people. So I think now the media is catching up and being like, oh, hold on, like people want to hear those people, they want to hear the girls play, like that's new. Because I think before they, it wasn't they had anything in particular against women. I think they were just a bit frightened and they just were inexperienced in how to market women, possibly. Like they just didn't really understand. They were like, okay, so you want to be sexy? Oh no, you don't want to be sexy. Okay, you want to be not sexy? Is it working? And they just like, I don't know, I don't feel like they were treating women as people, and that's how they were not knowing how to market them as a product, which is ultimately what like music and bands end up being, is more like trying to be a product. But
Yeah.
they kind of got confused with all of it, and now they're starting to pick up on the fact that women are out there and making music as they have always been, and now women are finding ways to market themselves and find their own audience. And now the magazines are starting to just be like, oh, I'll just borrow that. It's just easy pickings now. It's like I just like pick that up, and I know that my audience will like it because the audience is already there.
Yeah, one thing that is important to say too about the 80s and 90s and now 2000s is the fact that women in the 80s, in the 90s, they were like really competing with men to be in a band, which was very difficult. Also, I think the media didn't like very much the appearance because they didn't dress like a sexy lady or something like that. No, they were like competing with men to be as dirty as a man and to be as aggressive as a man in the visual and things like that. Like heavy boots, all in black, and sometimes is that the female playing? No, it's just a long hair guy. No, it's a female because you couldn't identify, and I think the media didn't like that very much. And
Yeah.
nowadays, like you can identify a girl playing easily, not just by that hair. It's like, how do you see this transition too? Because it's different. I know that you were like younger. It's like the girls from your time are different from the girls from my time. I am 46 years old, so it's like I was into that kind of girls that were dressing like men and things like that, just to prove that they were able to be in a band or something like that. And nowadays they don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Thanks God.
Yeah. I think women are finally being accepted for whatever they want to wear. If they want to present more feminine, and they can still play, but yeah, I think they wanted to play down their femininity to be able to fit in with the metal crowd. But I guess because especially for metal, it's become a lot wider. Like it's not as much of a boys club anymore. It's quite normal for there to be quite a few women at the shows. And there's a whole, and you talk about like how they dress as well. There's a whole thing of like alternative fashion. It's very common for women, and like you can do whatever you want. You can dress the more kind of like just like a band t-shirt and some jeans, or you can just go all out with like all kinds of stuff. So it's cool that it's got so much range and variety now.
And talking about girls playing, do you have a favorite female player, like a bass player or a guitar player?
Oh, yes. Oh man, I really love the Crypta.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. Oh
I
yeah. Oh
know
my
that.
god. Yeah, the bass player. She is amazing. She's so cool. I've been following her on Instagram for a while, and yeah, she's brilliant. And also from like older times, like I really like the Great Cat. The kind of shred
Yeah, for
guitar.
sure.
She's so crazy, and like I've no idea. She just kind of disappeared into like I don't really know what she's doing now. She's just like selling interesting photos on her website, but like watching interviews with her and like the way she played, she was a
Yeah,
rock star. Like she was a rock star, and I think the media didn't know what to do with her because she was like the craziness of like Ozzy Osbourne and all of these other people, but like female version. And they were like, I don't think the world is ready for this. I think she was like way far like in another 20 years time we would be ready for someone like the Great Cat to appear, but I don't think at the time anyone was really ready for
yeah.
her.
I really remember when she first appeared with that kind of clothing and things like that. And I remember that she said that she dressed that way in order to attract the attention of men because they wouldn't be attracted by a girl dressed normally playing the guitar. So it's like that's the way that she found to attract the attention of a man and show that they're like she was like better than much men who were considered like the best guitar players. And she was great playing the guitar, like she played Vivaldi and lots of classical stuff in that guitar, and she was like crazy performing.
Yeah. She
And
never felt like she had
instinct.
to like mute anything about herself to be taken seriously. Like, there's so many people so many men who dress very over the top, like
Yeah.
To be something a bit different. And but yeah, like very sexual clothing, whereas so many bands like Wasp and like Motley Crue, everything's very revealing, very sexualized kind of clothing. But when she did it, it was like, oh no, that is not okay.
Yeah, because I think it's kind of a theater. You have to have like something that attracts visually and
Yeah,
also the sound, things like that. Like the great Alice Cooper did. Alice Cooper live is amazing. Sometimes
yeah,
listening to can't be so amazing as being in a concert, because if you go to an Alice Cooper concert, it's completely different. It's like a Kiss concert. Like you can say like, Kiss is not so great, but if you go to a Kiss concert and you see the visual, all the effects, that's a concert. Like it's completely
yeah,
different than just listen to a band and enjoying the sounds. Like there
yeah.
is a theater in music in it. And still talking about the bass, one thing that you mentioned, Fernanda, and I think that she is great performing the bass on the vocals, is one fact that also you do the same thing. You don't use the pick, the fingers, and it's pretty rare to find someone in heavy metal who is able to play with the fingers. Mostly girls. And it's nice to see that. Yeah, I really respect move that in a bass player. Obviously, I like the guys who played with a pick, no problem too. But it's like when you see like, like it's more like feeling the instrument. And
Mm.
when you decided to play the bass, how is it for you? Is it like started with the pick, or just like, well, gonna use fingers?
It was always fingers. I just didn't have a plectrum. Basically, I just or if I found one, I got one and I'd lose it really quickly, or you get one and it's actually a guitar pick, so it's like not heavy enough to play the bass with. So I just always played with fingers. And then later on, I kind of started thinking, okay, a lot of the kind of music I do, metal and punk, is needs a plectrum. Like, let's give
Yeah,
it a go. I'm gonna have to start using this skill. But I think by that point it was too late. Like, it was so frustrating to go back to. It was like going back to square one with this hand. So this hand's like doing all of these crazy things, and this hand can't keep up. And it was so frustrating that I was like, right, I have to give up. So I'm really bad playing with the plectrum, but I've now made it my area of specialism. It's now my thing to play with fingers. And like, if you're looking for someone to play with a pick, it's probably not going to be me. But I love so many like fingerstyle bass players like Geezer Butler, Cliff Burton, Chris Squire, John Entwistle. Those are like my favorites. Sorry, not Chris Squire, he plays with the pick, but yeah, like, so a lot of these like very like heavy-handed like fingerstyle players that are really just work so well in metal.
yeah, it sounds. And it also it's completely different too. Here
Yeah.
we have a joke that if you play the bass and you play the pick, you're not a bassist. You were a guitar player that is frustrated.
Well, yeah, like, a lot of people do that transition. If you already learned guitar with a pick, then you'd probably naturally want to play bass with a pick. But I don't know. I think there's, I would say most metal bass players in like the modern kind of modern metal would be playing with a pick. So it's not really like it's not a real bass player, because how can you deny all of these bass players? But I think if you think about like the start of metal, like how when metal stuff first started with Black Sabbath in like 1969, it was all fingers really. So it depends if you
Yeah.
want to go back to your roots or not, really.
And talking about King Diamond, Mercyful Fate, and things like that, which album would you like to be like in? It's like an album that you would be like the bass player for sure. Like I wouldn't like to have recorded that album.
Oh, well, I mean, I guess maybe probably The Oath, Don't Break the Oath. That was one, like, I had like the Melissa album. That was my first Merciful Fate album, and I kind of like just listening to that constantly. But then yeah, more recently I've been getting into Don't Break the Oath, and because yeah, just from learning it and like
Yeah.
really focusing on the bass lines, which I didn't like. Was listening to them before, and I was like, this is some cool bass lines in here, but like actually picking them apart and seeing what's going on more precisely. It was really incredible to really study that.
Great. Well, nowadays we see like something very interesting about old bands. They started to look for musicians in new bands, something that was not so common in the 80s and the 90s. You know, they usually they looked for experienced bass players or guitar players from another famous band. You know, and you were like playing now. You were like from a band that is not so known. How do you feel about being in a band like that? You know, like with such responsibility, because if you were in the 90s, probably you wouldn't be hired by a big band, or they wouldn't look at you because there was no internet to record videos and things like that. There was no a great connection. There was the underground, obviously, but it was the underground. It would be taking like it would take like 1 or 2 years to be like recognized as something, and then attract 1 or 2 bands. How do you feel about it, and how do you see this? Because this is the good part of technology. You know, it really helps older bands to find people that have the same interests and things like that, and also for the musicians, it is good, because in the 80s and the 90s it was like a real pain to make a living as a musician, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as I said earlier about like women being able to reach people more easily and not having to rely on magazines. It's I guess everyone gets their breaks somewhere. I didn't expect it to be from posting videos online, but I guess the good thing on before, all you've got is people's recommendation, I suppose. And yeah, you do pick already established artists, musicians that have been touring with other bands, because you want to know not just if they can play, but what they're like. If you were like stuck on a tour bus with them for a month, are you going to want to kill each other? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And are they like responsible and respectable, just enough to like put up with them for the whole tour? And now it's not just like you can see that the people are playing and actually doing the business. There's a lot more like personal stuff, if you know what I mean. It's not just like, okay, this is my work, this is my playing.
Yeah.
People who follow you online want to know like what you do in your day-to-day life and what you're like when you're socializing and stuff like that. And I guess you do actually get to peer into someone's life a lot more on Instagram, which makes it easier to trust someone, because you start to like watch some of their videos, see how they talk about themselves and their music and their career, and you kind of build up that idea of what they're like. And if I don't know, like I keep thinking about this so often, because I think of all the people that they could have offered this job to that would have probably taken it, like, and they would have been. And what kind of responsibility have I been given to do this? It's such a huge thing to mess up. If it was
Yeah.
they put a lot of trust into me, which still is kind of baffling to me. But yeah, they did it. They said they were watching videos of like not just my bass videos, but like interviews I've done, and they were like, okay, she seems okay, it'll be fine. And yeah, they just got a good feeling from it and went for it, which is just crazy. I think
it's nice because before you start playing with Mercyful Fate, I was like watching your videos because I like bass players, so like, and there was like a recommendation of your videos on Facebook, and then I started to watch it, like, oh, the gun plays very well. It's nice to see. It's like the same for Sonia Nubis when she started to record her videos for after and before Cobra Spell, and she has like her on page to show the videos. And another question about females in dance and things like that. In your opinion, which is the best, a full female band or a mixed female band, like boys and girls together? How do you see this? Because it works completely different, and people also see it different.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in a lot of all female bands, and I've been in mixed bands. And yeah, personally, I feel like the mixed band is pretty cool. Like, I really liked the whole thing of like, okay, it's an all-female band, like it's special, it's worth listening to, and they deserve everything, all the success that every all-male band has had, because you don't say, oh, it's an all-male band called Metallica, and but so that's why I think the mixed thing is kind of the coolest one, because you're not making a big fuss about it. And I think that's the way things are going eventually. Like, I think it's great that we've got loads of all female bands kind of trying to rebalance the like crazy imbalance that's there at the moment. But as we get more women in visible in the industry, it will start to balance out, because men will be like, yeah, we could have a girl in the band, it's not going to make a big difference, it's not going to be like, I don't know what they imagine, but I think they imagine that it's going to be some kind of like, it's going to be more dramatic, or it's going to be difficult somehow to have a woman in their band. But yeah, I think eventually it's going to balance out, and that's the future, is just mixed bands, or just casually all female, casually all male. It's not going to be a big fuss. I guess that's what I
in my opinion, I hope I don't sound kind of sexist or something like that. I respect more the girls who are able to play with men, because they have more respect, like they were able to show that they are able to play equally. And when you have a band only with girls, you have a band. It's the same thing as you have a band as like a man. It's like the same thing, and also it's like we have bands that are like girls and one guy playing in the band. And this is interesting too. But the thing that I don't like much is when like people link the success of a band as like, it's because they're girls, just because they're girls. So like, I don't like it very much. I think like lots of bands are jealous when they see like girls succeeding, and I don't know there in Europe how is it if the other bands, lower bands, like the underground and things like that. I remember when Crypto started, lots of people said the same thing, like, they just got success because they're girls. They were like a bunch of men, like dirty men. They wouldn't be like playing in great festivals. How do you see that? Because it's really sexist,
Yeah,
I'm bored.
they completely overlook all of the work that's gone into it. Like, Crypta, they had it was kind of like a super group coming together. They'd all done so much before, and they're great musicians that people enjoy. They're not going to suddenly get these opportunities just for like having genitals, certain genitals. Like, they play great, and people love seeing their shows. So I do agree. It's really a lot of people do feel like jealous, or they just think, oh yeah, they're getting that opportunity just because they're girls, but they don't think about how much backlash they've had already just to get to that point. And just like, I don't know, like when I think back to when I started playing for the first time, and I was in a band with some of the girls in my class, and it wasn't because we didn't want to play with the boys. It was that the boys didn't want to play with us. And that's why we had a girl group. And we'd always like we'd book a room in the music room and stuff, so we could rehearse at lunchtime. And then the boys would come in and just like kick us out, just be like, no, we're a serious band. Like, you guys you're just girls messing around. And they just kick us out, and the teacher would be like, oh well, yeah, they are a real band. And it's like, well, we could be a real band if you gave us some practice time, but like, you don't think we're legitimately come here to play music together because we're girls. and that's just how it starts. And just little things like that not being respected in music spaces is always going to make it harder for you to play. And that's why there's so few women on lineups, and that's why sometimes when there is like an all-female lineup, they might put them like, maybe they would get a better position because they're the only ones. And like, I don't think that's unfair. I think that's very fair to give them a good spot, because they've worked really hard to get there. And it's something that's a bit different and unique, and women, like young women in the audience, need to see women doing that so that they can understand.
For sure.
Too.
And how was it for you when you decided to be a musician? And because I think it's like pretty difficult for women when they decide to follow a career as a musician, mostly in heavy metal, death metal bands, whatever, Because even if you played classical music, the parents and half of the family would say like, no way, there's no future. And for the girls, I think it is worse. I think of the support and some they have the support of the family, obviously, but some doesn't have any support. And how was it for you, like to get into this kind of because like not just playing in a common band, you were playing in a very big band. It's like and it's difficult when we are going to do that because you're not going to talk to your friends. Sometimes you don't see your family. You are on the road. Sometimes you don't have time for nothing. And for girls, I think it's like more difficult to deal with the situation. And also, that's why that most of the girl bands, they don't last much because of that. Because it is difficult to be on the road all the time touring. It's not like something that most of people think like, oh, it's amazing to be on a bus sweating a lot without taking a shower and things like that, and going to another city to perform another concert. Like how is it for you and when you decided to be on this crazy journey?
Well, I think, as for music in general, I think I agree, like women are kind of expected, and parents will kind of encourage them to take more sensible career options. They'd be like, no, okay, study maths, you could be a really good accountant or something, and study science, you could be a nurse, you could do this, and women are expected to take a more sensible approach, whereas I feel like sometimes in terms of like parents and sons versus parents and daughters, their sons, like they have like crazy dreams, and the parents are just like, yeah, go for it, like you'll find something, you'll find your way. But for women, it's like, okay, now be real, like that's not going to happen. You need to make sure you're secure. And I completely understand, like women having job security is very important, but like trying to do something a bit different that's going to be tricky. It has always been, I don't know, I've always wanted to like aim high, and I never really wanted to do something boring. So
Yeah.
I'd always like find a way to do something. And my parents were just, I studied music at university, so my parents were just pleased that I was going to get a degree, because what I really wanted to do was like run away and join the circus, or like completely drop out of education and just focus on my band and just like live in my parents' basement forever working on my band and probably getting nowhere. So they were just really happy that I decided to do like higher education and study music in a proper like school, so that I could actually get some real experience. And I'm so glad I did that, because it did make it like easier to form a career from music and not just playing with a band and just hoping to make it big, because I've played in bands for a long time and we've never really made it big, so because it's really hard. But I still like work as a musician full time, so and things like Mercyful Fate comes up, and it's completely unexpected, and it's just from like just a lot of hard work going into it. I think it's interesting what you said about the tour bus also, like you said about going away together, a lot of time spent together. And I kind of want to link that back to all female bands. Like there's something about all female bands which is kind of cool, is that like you're all in the same boat and you have the same dynamic, you have the same understanding of how the industry are going to treat you. So you feel very protected when you're all together, and like you're traveling together, you're going on tour, on the bus, and doing everything as a girl gang, being strong and understanding each other's problems is very empowering. So I understand why women want to do that, rather than being in mixed bands where they'll be like, some of the girls will be like, oh, well, I'm having trouble with this, and the guys are like, really, is that a problem for you? Like, are people treating you this way? I don't really understand. But just having that dynamic. And I guess on the Mercyful Fate bus, there weren't very many women on the tour. There was myself, King's assistant Jodie. There was also a lighting technician. I think that was it. Maybe someone on merch. But yeah, so of like a party of 20 people perhaps. There's 3 women, so it is a bit lonely, and especially at first when I don't know anyone there, it is a bit like, I don't know, mentally kind of scary sometimes, because after a few days you're like kind of missing home, and you just kind of want to speak to a friend, and you don't really know anyone in that, like nobody's like a close friend yet, so you just have to suck it up really and get on with it, because this is the tour life now.
No, that's great. One thing that is nice too is like the fact that now your other band is going to appear more because of you playing in a Mercyful Fate. And how do you feel about it? Because like Fury now is going to be like mentioned more because of you. Like it's a new responsibility too. And how is it for you? Like how is it for you actually?
Yeah, it's really cool. Like it's great that they're getting some recognition, and it's I mean, unfortunately for Fury, like I missed a few of their gigs, so I felt kind of bad, and I was worried that they'd be unhappy with me for going away for so long, and that they'll be worried that I won't come back and stuff like this. But I am back now, and there has been more interest in the gigs. Like I've had a few people at the last gigs that we did at the end of December, and they were like, "Oh, I saw that you were on tour with Mercyful Fate, and then I found your band." And so yeah, it's great that the bands are similar enough. Like they're both, like they're quite different really, but like they're both heavy metal. They've got a lot of riffs going on, some cool like high octane vocals going on. So I do hope it kind of benefits Fury in some way, and maybe the connections that I've made on the tour with people I've worked with, and like I don't know, but my experience and kind of my hopes for the band have been kind of rejuvenated in a way. Like looking at how Mercyful Fate do things, like the like imagination that King has for building the sets. It makes me think like, wow, I need to be thinking more about all of this stuff, all the visual stuff. I need to like push more, because it does like come back to you. Like it does really help the audience get into things like that. So yeah, it has inspired me, and has done some good stuff for Fury as well.
Yeah, it's like I was going to say that it's like it's different to play because they're kind of similar bands, but when you return to your own band, I think you have more emotion to play or something like that, because you were playing in one of the most successful band in a heavy metal scene, and you have your own band. You were expected to be in the scene too with your own band, but then you got into the scene with like one of the greatest band ever. Like this is kind of crazy, but it's nice at the same time. It's like. I don't know how to explain that. Like I think you understand what I'm saying, or I think you feel like what I'm saying, because it's like you have your own band, you're fighting to become known. Like recording is like easier nowadays, but sometimes it's difficult. It's like one thing that's like nowadays it's interesting. It's pretty easy to record. It's easy to get into a spotlight, but there are lots of thousand bands doing the same thing. And it's pretty difficult to get into like, oh, this is a good band, because there are thousands and thousands, and the internet puts lots of bands, and then it's like you were like into one of very good band like Fury is, but if you look for Fury, you have to like say thousands of bands in the same style, and if you type your name and Mercyful Fate, and then you have like, oh, she plays in that band, let's listen to that band, like this is interesting, like people get interested in your band because you were like a musician for another band. It's like crazy.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Like, and you spend so long working with the same like 3 or 4 people, and you're trying to do it all together, and then suddenly something happens, and then I've kind of broken off and I'm playing with these other people, and then you come back and it's kind of like, is everything still the same? And And it was really nice to come back to it, even though like the gigs are so much smaller than the tour with Mercyful Fate. But that we're getting there, and they've got the same energy, if you know what I mean. Like as long as the
Yeah.
crowd are excited, they're headbanging, they're singing along, all gigs feel amazing. Like they feel great as long as everyone in the audience is feeling great.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting because like I am the guy who does like that. If I found some good musician, I go like okay, which band has he or she played in? Like the same with you. Like, wow, where did she come from? Let's see. And that's like you discover the other band, and then you start listening to that. This is the same thing that in the 80s when we discovered the band, we went straight to the tank session to see which bands they were mentioned, and then we were able to look for more bands in the same style. And nowadays we do that with musicians.
Yeah.
This is pretty interesting. And well, I think we have a nice chat. It was great to talk to you. Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I hope Fury can succeed more and more too. It's like it's a very good band. I have to say I haven't listened to the band before, just because I didn't know the band. It's like a small band, but when you enter Mercyful Fate, I was going to check like let's see her resume. It's like there was Fury there, and then I went there to check, and it was like, oh, it's a great band. And I was like, I was used to your videos playing covers and things like that, and it's like, oh, she plays very well, but not the band, and this is like I think a very good counterpart of technology. You can find all the things that are like in the limbo, you could say like that. And I think Fury has like a great future, I think, and I hope to, because it's like we depend on small bands too. It's like playing in a big band is amazing, but also playing like with the feeling, even if the band isn't like that big. I think the feeling is the most important thing in a band. Like people don't understand much when you say like, oh, which makes like keep you what keeps you playing in a band that doesn't give any profit. The feeling. And some bands, they only aim profit, and then they become like something like Metallica. Like it's not bad, but you don't see the same feeling, the same things that were happening when they were teenagers. Obviously they grew up, they changed their minds, they have families and things like that. You grow up, you change, obviously, but you don't need to lose the feeling you had. It's like you look at Mercyful Fate, for instance, you look at King, it's the same feeling, and he has a family and has his business and things like that. There is no change in the feeling. There was no industry to change him, and this is like one of the most important thing, and the thing that I really respect in the band, even if it's a smaller band or a bigger band. Like, to keep the flame alive, the feeling that you were playing and what you compose, because for some bands it's just like, let's play something new, because the fans are going to like, half of the fans are not going to like, but we have fans, fuck it. And for you, how do you see this? Like when a band is like years and years producing the same thing and doesn't go like only for profit, it's like not the feeling. I think I would quit. It's a job, but it's like, no. It's like I have a small band. I like the way I play. I like what I play, and it's like, okay, if it happens, if it doesn't happen, no there. I like it, and then that's the point. Like, most of the people seem to be like, no. Motorhead, for instance, never like it's always the same.
Yeah, it has to be genuinely what you like, and if you start changing it because someone else wants you to play something else, then it's just like, well, it's it just feels like you're putting it together in a insincere way, and I think it's going to come across to certain people, even if like some people will like it. I guess maybe the masses will like it, the record industry will like it, or whatever. There'll be a lot of people who can see right through it and be like, no.
Yeah. Well, just to finish, I would like you to leave a message to your fans, because I know you have lots of fans for the videos, and also for the girls who are starting to playing some kind of musical instrument, the drums, the bass, the guitar, because it's important to have someone as you on the spotlight, and it's important for the girls to have someone as you, like showing them that they are able. Just do that, feel it, whatever. Don't like waste your time thinking about what the other people are going to think about you. Like do it.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. No. So for all my fans, thank you so much for your support. For any girls out there who are interested in playing music, then just do it. I fully encourage you. I warn you that it's going to be hard, but for every one of us that it's hard for, it gets easier for the next person. So I think it was much harder for people who were playing it 10 years before me, 10 years before that. It just gets easier and easier every time. So like, I just hope it's a lot easier for you, and I hope that it goes really well. And I've had a great experience this year. So, things can happen. Great things can happen. I really hope they happen to you too.
Yeah, it's like never give up. This is the most important thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
You never know,
Thank
like
you.
the last, at the moment you least expect it, something great could happen.
Yes, for sure. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Okay, it was a nice interview. It was very nice to talk to you too. Okay,
Yes.
and as I said, hope you can succeed more with Fury too, because it's a great band. It deserves to be more into the media and things like that. We know that's kind of difficult because there are thousands and thousands of bands, but I think I think this year is going to be a good year for your band too, and I really hope it. Because it is great to see new bands coming. Like we have lots of old bands playing. It's cool. But also we need new bands, like it's good to see, because there is, like, as I said, I am from the old generation. It's good to have a new generation. It's good to have a legacy, It's like most of the people sometimes they are like, no, the youngsters, they don't worth it. It's like we have a legacy. The legacy must pass on. Need to encourage younger people to be there doing what they do, because we're gonna die or you're gonna get old and see, like, just listen to the same old thing. And we need new blood, and I'm glad to see that we have new blood as you, as Fury, and other people that are being encouraged and are performing great sound. So this is important for the metal scene, and also to talk to you too, and the opportunity to share experiences. Like, I think it's pretty nice, and you have kind of like we can say that you are a very experienced musician, but you were like growing up into the scene. It's like it's different being an experienced musician and being into the scene. Like most people don't realize it.
Yeah.
So
sorry. Sorry, I can see the messages coming through from
yeah.
yeah. Sorry, I think the industry is kind of changing with me as I've been kind of growing into it, and all the social media platforms are changing every time I think, okay, I'll kind of crack this, and then there's a new one that comes up, and so I don't know. Like, I think the music industry has always been like that, and it's just I feel lucky that I've appeared in a time where I can use social media to make connections with people I never would have before, like some band from like Denmark, and I never would have met them, like wouldn't have bumped into them like randomly. So good job that all this happened.
Okay, so now we finished. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. Okay, I'm sorry for putting answers like questions after questions.
That's okay. No, it's great to speak to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you very much, and you guys stay tuned to Heavy Culture. Bye bye, Becky. It was a real pleasure to talk to you. Okay.
All right. Yes, you again. Bye bye.
Bye bye.